Betrayal doesn't always come with slammed doors or whispered rumors. Sometimes, it arrives on letterhead, dressed in formal signatures and corporate seals. Sometimes, it wears your name. My name is Madeline Cross. 36 years old. Senior financial auditor at one of the largest investment firms in Manhattan. For years, I believed numbers were my armor, solid, verifiable, incapable of deceit. People could lie. Contracts could bend. But balance sheets. They told the truth, or at least I thought they did. I was wrong. It began on an ordinary Tuesday, when the sky outside my office was the color of steel and the hum of fluorescent lights felt louder than usual. A stack of quarterly reports sat on my desk, each one identical at first glance. Clean, efficient, boring. That was the comfort of routine, until I saw my own initials signed at the bottom of an approval form I had never touched. Madeline Cross. Approval. $2.4 million transfer. Offshore subsidiary. I stared at the page until the numbers blurred. My hand was steady, but my chest was not. I hadn't signed it. Wouldn't have signed it. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't a mistake, it was a setup. I walked the paper down to compliance, my heels clicking across marble floors that had seen too many secrets. Elise Turner, my closest friend at the firm and the company's head legal counsel, looked up from her desk when I entered. Her red hair framed a face that always looked a step ahead. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. I placed the document in front of her. "Tell me what you see." Her eyes flicked over the page, expression unreadable. "Your signature. A transfer. Routine." "Elise," I pressed, my voice low. "I never signed this." She leaned back, steepling her fingers. "Then someone forged it. But why you?" That was the question clawing at me. Why me? Before I could answer, a shadow fell over the glass wall of her office. Victor Hale. The kind of man who filled a room without trying. He opened the door without knocking. "Ladies," he said smoothly. "Everything all right?" I forced a smile, the professional mask I'd worn for a decade. "Just routine review." His eyes lingered on me, sharp, calculating. "Good. Keep it that way." Then he was gone, leaving a trace of expensive cologne and something colder, suspicion. When I looked back, Elise was watching me carefully. "Be careful," she murmured. "Victor doesn't like surprises." That night, I couldn't sleep. I pored over every report on my laptop, searching for discrepancies. My apartment filled with the sterile glow of spreadsheets. That's when I found them. Patterns buried in footnotes and transaction IDs. Millions siphoned into shell companies overseas, each trail leading back to forged approvals bearing my name. Someone wanted me to take the fall. By morning, my path was clear. I needed evidence. Proof strong enough to survive the spin of executives and the charm of liars. The next day, I sought out Harper Gray, a junior analyst who had a reputation for seeing what others missed. She was quiet, almost invisible in meetings, but her reports had saved the firm more than once. "I need your help," I said, catching her in the archive room. Her eyes widened, cautious. "With what?" "Finding ghosts in the numbers." For a moment, she hesitated. Then she nodded. "Bring coffee." Over the next week, Harper and I combed through endless data, vendor invoices, tax filings, subsidiary ledgers. The more we dug, the more the pattern emerged. But the deeper we went, the more dangerous it became. One night, Harper slid a folder across the table to me. "This isn't just fraud," she whispered. "This is a conspiracy. And Victor isn't just aware, he's orchestrating it." Her words chilled me. I wanted to deny it, to believe the man who'd built this empire wouldn't risk it all on theft. But the numbers didn't lie. They never did. Later that week, during a board meeting, Ethan Cole, the CFO and the man who once held my heart, smiled at me from across the polished oak table. He spoke about growth strategies and expansion opportunities, but beneath his words, I heard the truth. He was part of this too. The betrayal wasn't only professional. It was personal. As the meeting adjourned, Ethan stopped me in the hall. His hand brushed mine, the same hand that once promised me forever. "Don't dig too deep, Maddie," he murmured. "For your own good." I pulled away, my heart hammering. If Ethan was warning me, it meant one thing: he knew exactly what I'd found. That night, alone in my apartment, I spread the forged documents across the table. Elise's words echoed in my head. "Be careful." Harper's warning whispered in my ears. "This is a conspiracy." And Ethan's voice lingered, sharp as glass. "Don't dig too deep." I looked at the papers, the fraudulent trail dressed in my name. And I wrote 3 words on a clean notepad, the only roadmap I could trust. Patience. Evidence. Justice. If they wanted me to be the scapegoat, they had underestimated me. This wasn't just about saving my career. This was about survival. And when the time came, I wouldn't just defend myself. I would bring them all down. The next morning, I walked into the office with the same mask I'd worn for years. Calm, professional, untouchable. But inside, my nerves hummed like power lines before a storm. Every desk I passed, every glance that lingered, felt like it carried a question. Asterisk, does she know? Asterisk. Elise called me into her office almost immediately. She had 2 coffees waiting, like she always did. "You didn't sleep, did you?" she asked, studying me with that sharp, lawyerly gaze. "Do I look like I did?" I muttered, setting the folder I carried onto her desk. She opened it, leafing through the documents Harper and I had pulled. "This is dangerous, Maddie. You're naming Victor. You're implicating Ethan. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand perfectly." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "If you're wrong, you lose everything. If you're right, you might still lose everything." But I didn't care. The truth was already out of the bottle. It was only a matter of how much damage it would do before it settled. That afternoon, Harper appeared at my desk with a flash drive hidden inside a crumpled folder. She leaned down, her voice barely audible. "I found something in the offshore filings. A password-protected archive. Looks like internal emails. Can you crack it?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not legally. Elise can." The words slipped out before I could stop them. Harper frowned. "Do you trust her?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Trust. That word felt foreign now, brittle and dangerous. Elise had always been my anchor, but lately her silences had been louder than her advice. That evening, long after most of the building had gone dark, I knocked on Elise's door. She was still at her desk, papers fanned around her like armor. "You need to see this," I said, sliding the flash drive across. Her brows lifted. "Emails?" I nodded. "Harper says it ties Victor and Ethan directly to the transfers. I need your help." She studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly. "You really don't know when to quit, do you?" "Not when my life's on the line." She sighed, plugged in the drive, and began typing. Her fingers moved quickly, her eyes narrowing as lines of code scrolled across the screen. Minutes later, a folder popped open. Hundreds of messages. Dates, times, names. She clicked one at random. The subject line made my breath catch, asterisk covering Cross. Asterisk. Inside, Victor's words were blunt. Asterisk, as long as Madeline's signature is on the paperwork, we're insulated. Ethan ensures compliance. Elise cleans the edges. Keep her quiet. Asterisk. My stomach dropped. My pulse thundered in my ears. Elise sat frozen, her face carefully blank. "You knew," I whispered. Her eyes flicked to mine. For a moment, there was something, regret, maybe, or shame. Then it vanished. "Maddie." I stood, chair scraping hard against the floor. "You've been helping him." "It's not that simple," she said quickly. "Victor, he doesn't forgive disloyalty. I didn't have a choice." "You had a choice," I snapped. "You always had a choice." She reached for me, but I pulled back. The office felt smaller, suffocating. My best friend, my supposed confidant, had been holding the knife the whole time. I left without another word, clutching the flash drive like it was both weapon and curse. At home, I poured myself a drink I couldn't taste. The emails glowed on my laptop screen, Every line another nail in the coffin Victor and Ethan had built for me. And Elise, her fingerprints were everywhere. Legal justifications. Draft contracts. Silence where there should have been questions. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But instead, I opened a fresh document and started building my own case. Dates. Names. Transfers. Cross-references. Every piece would matter. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, stop digging, or you'll regret it. Asterisk. No signature. No hint of who had sent it. But I didn't need one. I already knew. I leaned back, exhaustion pressing down on me. I thought about Ethan's warning, Elise's betrayal, Harper's quiet loyalty. And I realized something important. I wasn't alone. Not entirely. The next morning, Harper met me at a coffee shop away from the office. She slid into the booth, her eyes wary. You found something, didn't you? I found everything, I said. Her expression hardened. Then you have to move fast. Victor's not the kind of man who waits for his problems to solve themselves. If he thinks you're a liability, he'll bury me. She nodded. Exactly. I tapped the folder in front of me. Then we'll bury him first. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to steady. The walls were closing in, yes, but I was no longer standing still. I was moving, piece by piece, toward the moment when the truth would detonate in their faces. And when it did, I'd make sure I wasn't the one left in the rubble. The office felt different when I walked in on Monday, as if it had spent the weekend rehearsing its smiles. People moved in the same patterns, sat in the same chairs, but everything had been slightly altered, like a painting someone had retouched and refused to tell you about. My name hovered in a dozen email subject lines, none of them kind. I kept my head down. Work was theatre and I had a script to improvise. I'd learned long ago how to speak in numbers without betraying emotion. This week, numbers were weapons. First order of business, secure paper trails. If Victor had made a fortress of forged signatures and offshore conduits, I would build a bridge of evidence across it. I started with the smallest details, receipts, timestamps, server logs. Harper was invaluable. She moved through databases the way some people moved through books. Quiet, methodical, awkwardly brilliant. We worked in the archive room at night, lamps burning like guilty suns. We need an anchor, she said one night, tapping a spreadsheet until the cells shivered. Something that proves the chain starts here. Not just transactions, but intent. Emails do that, I said. We've got them. They could say anything, Harper countered. You need one person who can testify to a meeting, a voice on a call. Someone inside who remembers details only a human remembers. I thought of David, the compliance officer who'd retired 2 years ago. He had a habit of keeping notebooks, little soft ones full of observations people threw away. He'd always been the kind of man to notice how a CEO's tie loosened when lying. Finding him would take finesse. He liked quiet and avoided scandal. But if anyone would remember a line in a conversation about covering signatures, it would be him. We found him in a coffee shop 2 blocks from the river, hunched over a crossword like he'd done since the Reagan administration. He looked up with the blank stare of someone who had not expected to be relevant anymore. Madeline, he said, as if greeting an old weather pattern. You look tired. You used to write everything down, I said. He adjusted his glasses. I write retirement lists now. Do you remember October, 3 years ago? I asked. Board retreat. Late night. There was talk of risk management and pledges. He smiled, a small fox of a thing. Do you now? He didn't pull a notebook out immediately. That made me nervous. People who had been complicit kept their papers close. People who had been frightened of the wrong men burned them. David's hands folded over his coffee like a shield. You could make this easier, I said. If you remember. He sighed. I remember a toast that got too loud. A conversation about optics that made the room smell like lemon and old money. And, he paused. I remember Elise looking very tired. Like someone had asked her to hold a secret and it was weighing her down like a sack of coal. Elise's name landed like a pebble in the pond. The ripples hit Harper and made her jaw tighten. Would you tell the investigators? I asked. David considered. Then, slowly, he nodded. If you bring me something that makes me brave. I didn't want to be the man who watched and then spoke. But your mother, sorry, that's not my metaphor. If you have facts, I will go. Facts. Evidence. Witnesses. It was the kind of slow arithmetic I knew how to do. While David thought about courage, I thought about leverage. Victor liked control. He liked the illusion that nothing happened without his consent. I needed to unsettle that illusion. The first step was public. Get the board to notice activity in ways they couldn't ignore. The second step, protect myself so I didn't end up the scapegoat. I started with a small, tidy leak to a journalist friend, a non-attributional note about irregular transfers with a single suggestive phrase. Asterisk internal approval chain compromised. Asterisk it was minimal, precise. The paper ran with a thin column 3 days later, enough to make investors squint. Then I planted a seed in the audit system, a flagged transaction that would trigger an automatic internal review. It was a move so neat it made me smile. Automation could be a righteous thing. When the review notice popped into Victor's inbox at 8:07 on a Tuesday, I imagined him swearing into his coffee. He did swear. He summoned Ethan privately, voice low, and the two of them apologized to each other in the language of men who had practiced pressure. But Victor didn't panic. He never did, not in public. Instead, he mobilized executive presence. A board meeting called for Friday, a firm-wide memo about transparency, and a press release almost made of bluster. The press release was a lie wrapped in legalese, but it had a hole. I had planted that hole. When a reporter asked the right question, the press statement would look like a plastered chest. It would crack. All the while, I built allies. Elise was complicated, she'd betrayed me, yet I didn't want an enemy watching two sides. I needed a neutral. Harper agreed to be my shadow in the data room. David promised a witness statement if he was given formal protection. A small law firm I'd consulted unofficially agreed to keep records should anything happen. The architecture of defense was ugly but effective. And Ethan was a different problem. When he cornered me that week, he was all charm and old promises. You're making this personal, he said. In a corridor the lights had softened for privacy. It's not worth it. It's worth it if I don't want to end up in handcuffs, I said. You don't trust me, he said. I trust the ledger, I said. It doesn't kiss me goodbye. He laughed then, but not full. The laugh had a jagged edge. Be careful, he said, the same warning as before. Be careful how many people you involve. I'd involved David and Harper and a lawyer. I'd involved a reporter. I'd involved the automatic audit that would send Victor into a spiral. I'd involved risk. But I hadn't involved my heart. That was deliberate. Emotions were liabilities in corporate warfare. Friday's board meeting was unforgivingly scheduled at 9, as if to punish those who slept. The conference room had a walnut table and chairs that inhaled uncomfortably when you Saturday. The board filtered in like judges, and I could see that the press's curiosity had already reached them. There were thin lines in their faces I hadn't noticed before. Power looks old quickly. Victor controlled the agenda with the casual tyranny of someone who believes he is the only adult in the room. He began with growth, metrics, and ended with the phrase, "We will weather this, our reputation is our currency." His voice was velvet. Under the velvet, I tasted steel. I waited until the discussion wound down, until the faces softened with that complacency that prefaces a reveal. Then I asked, in the neutral tone of a woman who files objections, has our compliance team flagged any unusual outbound transfers in the past quarter? There was a pause, long enough that the projector hummed and a board member cleared his throat. Victor's jaw tightened. We have standard alerts, he said, but nothing outside regular channels. I felt Elliot from legal glance at Elise. Her eyes flicked to the ceiling, then down to me. She didn't speak. Actually, I said, and let the folder on my tablet slide to the table, the PDF glowing. We do. A $2.4 million transfer to an offshore subsidiary was approved under my initials. Unwitnessed. Unattested. And the approval trail is irregular. A murmur threaded through the room like a breeze through blinds. Victor's face was a study in controlled irritation. He cleared his throat, went to the podium, and with a casualness that was rehearsed, said, "We will investigate this internally. Madeline, I appreciate you bringing this forward." I had brought it forward. But I didn't say thank you. After the meeting, in the hollow where the laughter of small talk should have been, Ethan cornered me near the elevator. His eyes carried a tired pity. "You pushed a button you can't unpush," he said.
No, he answered.
"I pushed a button that will make people listen." He stared at me like I'd forgotten something crucial. "I did not sign those approvals," he said. "But I did know about some of the transfers." The admission hit like a fist. We used them to keep cash flowing while we waited for a donor to close. It was supposed to be temporary. "Temporary until the books were cooked," I said. "Until the party kept dancing." He inhaled, trying to measure moral calculus and failing. "Victor built this from nothing," he said. "He has people depending on him. You exposing this could ruin livelihoods." "Whose livelihoods?" I asked. "The men who make choices, or the clerks who cash the checks?" He didn't answer. That night, alone in the stairwell, I let myself feel the fatigue. I'd made enemies. I'd made a path forward. But power is elastic. The more you pull, the more it snaps back. And when it snapped, I wanted to be ready. I opened my phone and sent a simple message to Elise. *, we need to talk. Tonight. My place. 8 p.m. *, then I added Harper and David to a group chat. * standby. No replies after 9 p.m. *. Patience. Evidence. Justice. The plan was still fragile, but it existed. And sometimes, a plan is all you need to start winning. Elise arrived at my apartment 10 minutes late. She always prided herself on punctuality, so the delay told me she was rehearsing her guilt. When I opened the door, she was carrying a bottle of wine like it might distract me from the flash drive burning a hole in my desk. "I wasn't sure if this was an ambush," she said softly. "It is," I replied. "But you walked into it anyway." Her laugh was fragile. She sank into my couch, setting the bottle on the table between us. "Maddie, you don't understand." "No," I cut in, sharper than I meant to. "I understand perfectly. Victor used me. Ethan signed off. And you cleaned their mess." Her shoulders slumped, the practiced poise evaporating. I didn't know how deep it went. At first it was small, technical fixes, tightening language, smoothing irregularities. Then one day, I looked up and realized I was drafting contracts that shouldn't exist. "By then," she trailed off. "By then, Victor had you," I finished. She didn't argue. The silence stretched. For years, Elise had been my anchor. Now she was a mirror, forcing me to see just how naive I had been. Finally, she said, "What's your plan?" I hesitated. Trusting her felt like playing Russian roulette, but the truth was, Elise had knowledge I couldn't replicate. To build a case strong enough to survive their counterattack. To take it outside the walls Victor controls. She nodded slowly. "Then you need something bigger than emails. You need proof they benefited personally. Accounts. Properties. Shell companies tied to their names. You'd know where to look." She winced but didn't deny it. "I'll help you. But Maddie, you have to promise me something. When this blows open, don't paint me as the villain. I can't survive that." Her words stung. I wanted to scream that she already was part of the villainy, that her silence had sharpened their knives. But I swallowed it. Rage could wait. "Help me," I said, "and we'll both walk out alive." Later that night, I forwarded copies of the emails to an encrypted drive Harper managed. A simple message, * backups in place. If anything happens to me, you know what to do. *. Sleep was impossible. My phone buzzed twice with blocked calls I ignored. At 3 a.m., I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment, but when I looked through the peephole, it was empty. The next day at work, the atmosphere was different again. The press had escalated. The article wasn't a whisper anymore, it was a front-page question. Investors were calling. And Victor's mask was slipping. He called me into his office mid-afternoon. The blinds were drawn, his tie loosened, his smile gone. "Madeline," he said evenly, "you've been busy." I didn't answer. He leaned forward, voice low. "I built this company. I gave you your career. And you repay me by dragging our name through the mud." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "You dragged it there yourself." His jaw flexed. "You think you're safe because you've hoarded some files. Because you have friends in low places. You don't know the half of it. I could end you with a single press conference." "Then do it," I said, surprising even myself. "But make sure you can still smile when the evidence surfaces." For the first time, Victor looked rattled. It was small, a twitch at the corner of his eye, but I saw it. That was enough to keep me steady as I left his office. That night, Harper sent me a message with 3 words, "found the trail." The attachment was a series of documents tying Victor's shell accounts directly to a luxury property overseas. His name wasn't on the deed, of course, but Ethan's was. Elise's notes had left a breadcrumb trail straight to their door. It was enough. Not everything, but enough to make them sweat. And when powerful men sweat, they make mistakes.